One of the biggest complaints from the Ashes of Creation haters is, it's taking too long! However, there are some details that many of you are not aware of and that few are pointing out. So I think it's time for me, the YouTuber with a tiny reach and amazing sponsors, to set the record straight. First, I want to talk about MMO development times. MMOs are highly complex and take a long time to develop. Ashes is going to be on the high end of development times, but there are several reasons for that, which I will get into later in the video. But first, let's look at how long it took to develop the current popular MMOs. While it took 5 years to develop originally, but it was an existing studio that had a bunch of developers that could shift over to the MMO project. This is something Intrepid did not have the luxury of. Also, while it launched wasn't great at all in comparison to modern standards. There was minimal content, a massive amount of bugs, and the polish wasn't there yet. It just happened to be a time when that was the state of all MMOs. It was an easier time to launch an MMO because the standards hadn't been raised yet. An MMO that tried to launch today with the features and level of polish that WoW had in 2004 would flop incredibly hard. Even without having to meet modern standards, it still took a full 5 years for Blizzard to develop World of Warcraft as an existing studio. Final Fantasy XIV took 5 years for its first launch, which failed and then relaunched 3 years later. So in total 8 years. Again, this was an existing studio. And here are a bunch more currently popular MMOs and their development times. Do note that many of these projects came from existing developers or the scope was incredibly simplistic. In fact, no MMO on this list has a scope as complex as Ashes. Another important distinction, it is much harder to launch an MMO these days than it was in 2004. These days you have to launch with a lot more content and polish to have a successful MMO. Then how about unreleased projects? Throne and Liberty has been in development for 12 years. It still has not launched in the West. The Riot MMO first started development in 2016. For 8 years they have been working on an MMO, and it has just been reset again and is back at square one, which probably means a minimum of 5 more years or 13 total before that game would release if it actually does. And let's be honest, it is probably never going to release. So anywhere from 5 to 13 years seems to be how long it takes to develop an MMO. The average is probably somewhere around 7 to 8 years. It takes time. And there are some other details about Ashes development that many gloss over but are important to point out, which of course we'll get to after this video's sponsor, Cox. A cock, or a rooster, is a male bird. There's a glacier in Antarctica called Cox Glacier. There's also a Mount Cox in Antarctica. This is why Antarctica is at the top of my bucket list of places to visit. Oh, and I almost forgot, cock is also a slang name for penis. Everybody loves penis, including me. My favorite cock in the animal kingdom is definitely the tapir cock, but ostrich cocks are a very close second. I had a long conversation with Jamie and Annie on Tangents of Creation on what it would be like to have dicks in place of fingers on your hand.
Okay, so would you rather be sexually attracted to an inanimate object and nothing else, or have penises for fingers on one of your hands?
God.
Oh boy. Oh. Oh, penises for fingers. I love dicks, so
I was gonna
lots of dicks. Give me all the dicks. As much as I love dicks, I think dick hands would be a huge challenge. Having to get your dick hands hard to pick things up might be difficult. Getting your dick fingers cut in things could be pretty brutal. So let's all hope we don't wake up one day with dick hands. At least not until we have gotten to play Ashes of Creation for a while. Thanks again to Cox for sponsoring today's video. Now back to Rive rambling on about shit that you all forget about because you only remember the dick part. Intrepid has had some challenges during development that many of the MMOs I mentioned earlier did not have. The biggest to me is the fact that they are a new studio. Most of the currently popular MMOs were developed by existing studios. Intrepid in 2017, when the game started development, had 15 employees and not all of them were developers. They hoped to hit 100 employees in 2018, but they were not able to hit 100 employees until 2021. 2021. It is hard for a new studio to get employees since the job security is often lower at startups, and Steven is also picky on who he will hire. Plus, COVID was an additional setback. So full production really didn't get started until 2021 when they finally had enough employees to make real progress on the project. Then there was a major bug in the network code that was found during apocalypse testing that caused them to have to rewrite their network code and certainly set the project back. And I also think upgrading from UE4 to UE5 set the project back some as well. Which these types of delays and setbacks are normal with MMO development. You just never hear about the vast majority of them because most developers develop MMOs in a completely closed environment. Intrepid has embraced open development, which means the good and the bad gets exposed. You don't just get a carefully curated experience, you get it all. And then the final reason Ashes is taking so long. The game is fucking massive. It just is. There is no way around that. And on one hand, I've always viewed the scope as a potential issue. How do you make all these interconnected systems work well together and all of them feel good? Then have a massive 1,200 square kilometer world map, and on every square inch of this world map you have systems on top of systems on top of more systems. Getting all of that in place and feeling fluid is not an easy task. But on the other hand, while I view that as a concern, it is also why I am interested in this project. Because it is not just yet another WoW clone. It is aiming big. It is trying new things. And that gets my nerd boner raging. And of course, speaking of nerd boners, Ryvelations is live again tonight on Twitch. I'll see you there, and I'll see you guys in the next video.